Okay, today we're going to work with capturing a moment, a fleeting moment, and that means could be a time of day when the light is changing rapidly. It could be a illustration of a time when you have some hard shadows but light. And I'm choosing an image from a village in Italy called Spello, where I spent some time a couple years ago. And it's a photo that I took. So I feel comfortable that I can use this image. And if I did a great job, I could actually show it and put it up for sale. I'm going to be working with a little bit of line work using a dip pen so that I can dip it into watercolor if I want to, or I can use it with ink. And I have also some of these. Here's a brush pen that has a point that's a brush, so I can get thin lines or thick lines. And then I have various sizes here of just liners. This is another brush pen, I guess, but it's a different brand, I think. Yeah, it's a different brand. This one says Pigma, and well, they both say Pigma, but they're not exactly the same. So I have those, and I'll be working with my favorite brushes, which is a big number 24 for washes and a smaller number 10 round. And then, as usual, I have a brush called a scrubber brush with an angled point so that I can scrape out things I might want to scrape out. And I will work with a limited palette today. I'll choose the three primaries. I think in this case, I'll use probably a Rose Madder Genuine. And I'll use the transparents, the ones that Jean Dobie recommends using. It's Rose Madder Genuine, Aurelian Yellow, and Cobalt Blue. So if you have similar colors and you want to just work with, either ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and a tad yellow, you can do that too. Before we get started, I will start a little sketch so that I have a guideline to go by. And I'm working with just an HB pencil. And when I look at my image here, I see a very strong structure of a balcony up here with some vegetation that hangs out over the street. And I have some mountains in the distance and some angles of buildings. So I'll just start over here looking at the division of space. And here's a building on the side. Looks like I'm angling it more than it needs to be. I need to hold my pencil this way. And there's kind of a diagonal here, the perspective of the buildings as they kind of curve around into the distance. So I need to set that structure first.
I like how you're holding your pencil. And for beginners, that's the way you should do it.
Yeah.
Not the way draftsmen do it, but that's the way you should do it as an artist.
It gives you that, you can do a more graceful swing.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you, instead of, like you said, it's a little bit of a looser style. That's why I was having trouble when I was going like this. It just doesn't work for me. And now I'm looking at some of the angles of the roof structures here. This is the skeleton of my drawing or my painting. And you noticed in the demos that we watched, the videos, that the drawings that some of those people do are quite detailed. Of course, I'm not going to do that on here because I'm wanting to spend more time painting. But it's not a bad idea if you have the time to do something that's a little more structured like that. Then there's a little walkway or a little archway here that I think is pretty interesting between some of the buildings. Some of these angles down here at the bottom could be confusing because there are some look straight and some look curved. Then we have the pattern of the shadow too, so we can't forget that.
Sylvia, is there a way to put the image, a small clip of it, if those of us that didn't print it out?
If I were to, if I leave the meeting and make it a file picture, I could probably do that.
No, that's all right. I just didn't print it out. So,
well, yeah, I think that what you should do is open it in preview and make a small image of it on your computer. Or
oh, I'm not too techie. That's all right.
oh, okay. Yeah, I know it's harder when you don't have the picture to look at.
Yeah.
You
can open it on another device.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
That's what we both, great minds, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see here if I get the angle of this arch. It's important to get your perspective correct on things like archways. And now the shadows. The shadows also define the shape of what's on the ground. And in this case, it has a raised walkway in the center. So you see the shadow goes down where it's more of a groove and up where it's a stepway. Oh, something fell off my wall. I guess those little things you stick on the wall don't last forever with humidity and so forth. Okay, let me see here. I'm going to carry this through here. Shape of a plant hanging down. On the balcony. Donna, how's your grandson? You mentioned he was having surgery. Are you there, Donna? Well, maybe she stepped away. We'll have to see later on. Well, there's a very interesting shadow here on the side of the building. I'm tempted to do my shadows first this time. Something a little different, but maybe I'll block those in before too far into that so that I'll have that established. Okay. I have to lower some of my drawing here. You have a dog, Tim?
Thought I was muted. Apparently.
Wrong.
Actually, two dogs on either side of me at the moment.
Oh, okay. Something's happening. It's more serene. It doesn't. Okay, so now I'm going to look at where the shadow placement is on the building here. And shadows are from the balcony, I believe. Not quite sure, but or maybe it's from the roof above, but it's an interesting composition because it has these diagonals in the shadow.
I think it's a shadow from the opposite wall.
Yeah, and so that includes the shape of the roof line, right?
Right.
Yeah. I think I got a little bit of my, I don't think I gave enough space to some of my elements here in the lower part. I've got more sky. Oh, well. And then there's a mountain back here too. Has anybody besides me ever been to Spello? In the springtime,
I have. I've been to Stella. It's in Umbria, huh?
yes, and it has,
Near Todi
yeah,
or Spoleto.
it has a festival, a flower festival in this early summers, about this time actually. And everybody hangs baskets of flowers and it's really pretty.
What's it near?
Let's see.
It's near Spurlunga and Todi. It's an hour and about 30, 40 minutes from Rome, north.
Thanks, Penny.
Penny, do you, are you going back to your property there this summer or do you get to go occasionally?
You know, I'm going to wait and see. It looks, you know, Europe is having a shaky time still, so I thought I'd wait it out.
Yeah,
I think it's safer, you know, with all the variants around.
yeah. I have property in Wyoming that I need to check on, but I just saw on the news last night, it's one of the 4 states that where the rate is increasing of COVID. And only 34% of the people have been vaccinated and they don't believe in wearing masks. And I just thought, well, maybe I don't really have to go. I can hire somebody to just go and do some touch-up painting and rental
Yeah,
cars.
you don't want to chance it.
No, rental cars are $100 a day there now.
Jeez.
So for that, I can actually, buy quite a few paints.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a little lantern on the side here, which is an interesting shape. And maybe that would be something that we could put a little light on, and make this more of an evening instead of what I'm seeing. There's another lamp that's sticking out here. I'll bring the lantern down slightly.
Is that a roof beyond the archway?
Yeah, there's a roof here. There's a roof here and here. I actually don't have it aligned too well with my balcony. It goes up a little farther. But that's okay. I won't connect it. And then there's a wall that comes over here. So
Yeah.
there's a roof line here. And then there's a wall here.
Just above the archway in the photo on the left side of the archway, it's unclear what that darker shape is in the picture.
That's what I was asking, if that's a roof.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious.
Are you talking about this right here?
In the photo,
No,
above,
below.
right, just
Below
directly
that.
above the arch.
Right there.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It looks like kind of looks like a shadow, doesn't it? Like it's a part of the shadow that extends to here. It's like
I don't know, it's got waivers in it.
I wonder if I can lighten that up a little bit somehow. Let me see if I can get it on my other monitor. Is on one monitor, it's a little darker. It
Almost looks like arch roof going away from the main arch.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. I think it is. It's an arched shape that must be on another part of a structure
Right.
behind it. Okay, that's good. But I don't know if I'll put that in like that. Because if it doesn't,
Like, eliminate it.
yeah, if it doesn't make sense in the photo, it might not make sense in my painting either. I like the darkness of it though, you see? Because it does help to create, it makes the arch stand out more. So I'll just have to kind of play that by ear. But I noticed if I enlarge the image in preview, I can see it better. And put on my glasses. Okay. Now I have to make it a little bit smaller so I can see it better. All right. So I don't have everything exactly like it is here, but I'm not going to worry. This is going to be more impressionistic than accurately, architecturally accurate. In the foreground, you can see the steps slightly, so I need to get the curvature of the steps coming up. And then it gets really kind of hard to see down here in the distance what some of these elements are. Okay, and now on this brick wall here in the foreground, there's a, even though it's in shadow, it has texture. So I think what I'll do is try that technique where we spattered some water into the shadow that we saw in one of the videos. So here's another little lamp down here. Oops, it goes out of this one, actually. I think I'm ready to start painting. So I've got my palette here and I'm going to work with cobalt blue. I think I probably should put a little fresh paint in there. I like working with fresh paint as much as possible. It's a little bit easier to use if it's kind of wet. Well, I have a dried up tube, but that's not going to help me. Okay, there we go. And my Rose Madder Genuine is over here, and my Aurelian Yellow is down here in the corner, and that's, I've got some green mixed with it, so I have to make sure I use the cleaner one there. So those are the three I'll be working with primarily. I'll probably end up adding a little more of a few other things here and there. I just probably can't help it, but that's what I'm going to start with. So I don't think I'll work with the pen and ink first. I think I'll add it last because I want to get that wash going and I want to get some atmospheric effects too. So let me start with just a wash in the background in the sky. I'm wetting the paper with just water and my flat brush. And I'm kind of outlining where the buildings are here with the wet shape. I'm going over where the mountains will be. I'm going to go ahead and because the shadow or the balcony is dark, I'm going to go ahead and extend that to this area too. And I'll start with my cobalt blue. Even though in the photo it's very, very light, I'm going to add just a little more pigment. When blue photographs, it usually does lighten up a little, and also with the paint, when it dries, it will lighten up too. So. Because I want a little more of that atmospheric effect, I'll put a little bit of warmth in there too, maybe a little bit of a pinkish tone. So I'm coming in with my Rose Madder Genuine. I keep my cools on one side of my palette when I'm mixing, and my warms on the other side. I'm letting it mix on the paper. And while it's still damp, I'm going to start adding some of my green. Well, it's not really my green, is it? It's my, I could bring my cobalt down. I did bring it over where the mountains are. So now what I'll do is add a little bit of yellow, Aurelian yellow, for some greens. Now, I don't want it to be a real warm green, so I'm going to add a little bit of the Rose Madder Genuine to it too. And of course, blue. I have to be careful not to get too close to the edge of the mountain, or it's going to bleed too much into my sky. And I want that soft quality of distant mountains. And you'll see that the paint is only going to the dry edge. And I dab my paper towel to dry my brush a little bit. I'm painting through the balcony because there's green of the distant hills. Okay, now as it dries, I'm looking for places where I want it to be a little darker. And I may have to wait for it to dry more because some of the areas are close to the top of the ridge of the hill. But I want to add a little more blue into that. I've gone a little bit above my roof line here with my mountain, but that's okay.
Dumb question, but are you painting on a flat surface or on an easel?
I'm on an easel and it's at a little bit of an angle.
Okay,
So it is running down to the wet edge that I have, or the dry edge.
And it's not a dumb question.
Oh, no, it's a good.
thank you, Tim.
Very good question. Okay. So I'll have to wait a little bit for that to dry before I do more there. What I want to do now is come in with some of the buildings to get that effect of kind of a running, running paint on the sides so that I can create more contrast and so forth. I'm going to start with what's on the side here, which is darker, because I want to kind of get that. I don't like the white of the paper there. So let me start with mixing. Well, I'll start with the blue. No, I take that back. Before I paint, I'm going to put in a little warm tone underneath it for an underpainting, so that there'll be a little bit of a glow coming through. So I'm going to put some of my Aurelian yellow first. And that can go over a bigger percentage, not just this side. Oh, I forgot part of the mountain. I can see now. Okay, I better take my other brush and add that while it's still a little wet. The underneath side of this.
So you're now painting wet on dry?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what you do when you forget to do things. I even had it happen one time. I forgot to add bleed to my illustration. Bleed is what an illustrator has to put all along the outside edge. I had to add the bleed later, and boy, that was hard because I had a hard edge. And, it took some manipulating, but I didn't want to start over, so I managed to do it. Okay. So back to adding some of the yellow here. I've got a new sprayer I just bought, so I'm anxious to use it to dampen the paper and make things run. So you spray this a little. It's a little bit more of a mist than what I had before. It's this little thing I got at a little store out here called Five Below or something like that. Okay, so. Okay, now I see some pinkish or orangey tones in this one side. So while it's still damp, I'm going to add a little bit of this rose madder genuine to this building. And then where I want it to be more orange, add a little bit of the yellow to it too while it's still wet. And now I'm just looking at some of the colors and shapes that I'm seeing here where I think I want to have an underglow, you know, a glow of color showing through because I'll be adding some darks to it. Okay, I'm mixing a little bit of a darker now tone. I'm going to add some salt to this in a minute. Okay, now I have different kinds of salt here. This is the fine salt, table salt. I'll add some of that into this area here where I have the multicolors. But to get a little more of an interesting effect, I have some of the heavier salt too, so I'll add that. Now what will happen when I come back in with some darker color, which I'm going to do now with some blue and rose madder, and I start to add little bits of that in here, it's going to separate around the salt. So it'll make an even more interesting texture in places. I'm just dropping some cobalt blue and rose madder genuine mixed together into this area where I've sprinkled some salt. I'm going to let it run a little bit. It looks pretty dark on the camera, but not as dark on my paper. And it's always good to have an extra little bit of paper towel handy because there are places where it might be bleeding into an area you don't want it to bleed into. You can just go up with a dry paper towel and lightly touch that area. Okay, now with my flat brush, I'm gonna come in and do some painting on over the yellow that I put here. So I'm mixing a little bit of a violet together with the cobalt and rose madder. Oops, I didn't mean to have a big blob of cobalt there, but I got one. And I'll go ahead and put a little salt on that too. The heavier salt. And flick a little water on it. Okay. So coming down to this area below, I want to tie this darker area in with what I have already here. And this is just a mix of the cobalt blue and rose madder with maybe a slight bit of yellow to tone it down. painting the shape of this shadow. Yeah, I don't want to forget about my mountaintop. So I'm coming back in now with a little bit of cobalt blue and some of the green or yellow to create kind of a blue green. So I want to get a little darker and more defined on the mountain. So I'm softening the edge here and bringing some of that color into other areas back here too. So it has a little bit of depth. Donna, are you back with us? I wanted to ask about your grandson.
Oh, there was a 3-hour surgery, but it was successful.
Oh, good. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
How long will he be in the hospital?
It was done as an outpatient.
Oh,
Yeah, I may have stepped away because my daughter is going through a divorce and
yeah.
needed to talk for a second.
Yeah, I've known a few people who were married to Middle Easterners, and the divorce process when it came to the children was difficult.
Yeah, to say the least. Plus, he thinks everything is his. So,
Yeah, there was some law that when a boy is 7 years old, they have to go live with their father
Hmm.
in Saudi Arabia.
yeah. Well, he's Egyptian,
Yeah.
almost as bad.
Okay, you can see what's happening where I dropped a larger grain salt into the texture of the wall over here. It's really making a difference. Now, here you can see that what I painted bled into my other wall. So it's still kind of damp, so I can still lift some of that. The texture is not quite as effective because I think it was wet, more wet maybe, and I didn't get quite the effect that I wanted. So I might, when I come back in, I'll have to create a little bit more of that. But you know, it's a gradual process. So sometimes you get what you want and sometimes you don't. So
Well, it's probably good that the salt granules weren't the same size in that area anyway.
yeah, they're softer.
Yeah.
Now I'm seeing that this other little building here, need to paint something on it. I'm going to vary it slightly from the other one because I don't want it to look like the exact same building. So I'm putting a little bit more of a greenish tone on that part.
Sylvia, how did you get the green for the mountain?
It's cobalt blue with rose madder genuine.
Okay, thanks.
And I think, oh, and it has, no, it has yellow, Aurelian yellow too. I mean, I have a little bit of the rose madder, but a lot of the yellow compared, because I wanted it to be, you have to have all three primaries if you want something to be a little gray. So it does have some of each, but probably more of the cobalt and yellow. Okay, so now I have kind of a shadow pattern here. And oh, you see what happened down here is that it's bleeding back up because I have my paper tilted. So I'm getting that bleed back down at the bottom. And I'll have to come back in now and address that. Soften the edge. Oh, had some white gouache on there I didn't see. So now I'm going to tip it the other way. Wanted to tip a little bit more that way. Okay, so I'm looking at some of the middle ground now, and I see a color that's getting a little bit more gray as it goes back into the distance here. It still has some warmth to it though. So I'm going to start with some blue mixed with just a little bit of the yellow. I don't want it to be too similar to the color of the vegetation, so I have to add a little bit more of the warmth to it. So a little bit of the rose madder also. I said it has to be lighter, but I think what's going to happen is I'm going to have to get darker with what I have in the foreground.
Sylvia, I think you're allowed to use some umber, given that it's Umbria.
Well, yeah, wouldn't that be nice? I created an umber with my primaries here, you see. It's a little bit of a reddish umber. So are you renting your property out as an Airbnb there?
No, I've never done that. And I don't think this would be a good time to be doing that.
Yeah.
You know, they're having such a struggle over there. They take one step forward and two steps back, and
Oh,
every commune and province is in a different condition.
I know some people who can't fly here to get their COVID shots.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem, the availability.
Mhm. Okay, I lost a little bit of my texture here in the foreground that I want to recapture. So a little more salt. I think what I need to do now is to come in with some of my darks on this side, just so I can start to work with my values. I'm getting a lot of kind of mixture here of different colors and so forth for an underpainting, and I'm feeling the need to strengthen that side. So may need to work with a smaller flat brush. So this is a 1/2 inch, I think. And I think it would be a good one to use for some of the balcony up here. In order to get that dark color, it's going to be cobalt blue, mixture of cobalt blue, the rose madder genuine, and the Aurelian yellow. I don't want to contaminate that with my dark paint, so I'll get a different brush to get some of that yellow. Okay, so this has kind of a blue tendency to it, but I can always darken it later with something else. So I'm going to start with just, let's see, some of the dark I see on this side, trying to figure out where did I actually put all this. Okay. I think when I was doing the drawing, it was so dark on here, I didn't even see some of this that's in the photo. So I think I made it a little more narrow in my painting than it actually is. Put my glasses on. So I've got this a little different than it is in the photo. Poor planning. This is what happens when you're trying to do something in a short amount of time.
Gotta be hard to be rushed like this.
We admire what you do, Sylvia. Thank you for doing it.
Well, hopefully, when we get out and we're painting out in the open, I'll do a demo to start with, but then I'll come around and I'll work with you individually. And that'll be kind of neat. That'll be in the fall.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Won't that be fun? Actually, at that point, we'll also see about doing more of the working with the sketching with the pen and ink too. And they might not be as long, they are go a little quicker when you're working more in that sketching style.
Well, it's easy to forget when you're working from a reference photo that you have a an artistic license, so.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm doing one of those right now. Sketch.
Oh,
Where do you
good.
get one of those licenses?
Well, you have to give it to yourself, but it's a good thing to remember.
I
You
want
have
to
to
sign up for mine.
Yeah, of course.
We have to be not too hard on ourselves, you know, give us
Yeah.
license to do something a little different. After all, aren't we supposed to be a creative people?
If only, huh?
And plus, we're learning. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect every time.
Exactly.
How can you learn anything except by doing it and flubbing and
Right.
or whatever?
Well, there's plenty of that.
You just say, I meant to do that.
Yeah. Well, and it doesn't even, yeah, and sometimes sometimes something that was not what you meant comes out better, sometimes not, but you're allowed to learn.
I have some yellow on this brush and I'm just going to flip it here into the shadow areas.
FAIL stands for first attempt in learning.
Yeah, I'm so far under impression that when you do en plein air, you have to be in a hurry.
Oh,
Yes,
no.
because the light will change.
Unless you come to the same location with the same weather, same time.
Yeah, you have, well, that's one of the nice things about watercolor is that it goes fairly quickly, you know?
Right.
Can't seem to get this whole thing on this screen. Okay, so now you see this is really dark compared to the rest. But that was important because I needed to get that contrast in order for me to carry on. Otherwise, it would be all too light. So now I'm going to come in and bring in some greens with my cobalt and my yellow and try to get a little bit of that warmth that's in the vegetation on here. Yellow here. Starting with the yellow, and then I'm going to drop some blue into it. Let's try banana first. It usually sits pretty well. You get hungry. You can try a banana first. I love banana. Okay, this is a little too dark.
Maybe people can mute themselves if they're talking to other people. Thank you.
And I'm using my brush to lift a little bit of the paint because
If I still have a bagel, if I don't.
okay, Georgia, can you mute yourself?
Georgia,
Yeah.
can you mute yourself?
Oh, so sorry. My grandson is homesick. I'm very sorry.
Now this is the foliage that's overhanging the balcony. I'm finding it difficult to work with a limited palette. I'm not used to doing that. I like some of the other colors I get. Okay, let's see what's next. I'll do some of the rooftops. And there's a pattern to those. So I think I'll work first with some of the darker shading and then come back in with a glaze. So this is my violet that I mixed with the cobalt blue and the rose madder. And I might come back with some pen and ink on some of this. So I'm just going to put in a little bit of the texture there with my paint. You see, once you start adding these darks, it really does help to give you more of a, better idea of some of the adjustments you need to make to your values.
Well, you were laying a solid foundation of atmosphere. So
Yeah.
frankly, I didn't see any mistakes or faux pas.
Oh, good. I did. But it's for me, it's mostly in the drawing, not having spent time really drawing and observing it.
No one knows what the photo looks like.
Oh, that's true. That's why I don't
Yep.
show the photo while I'm painting, you know.
It's beautiful.
It's funny, isn't it? I didn't think about how you're not looking at the photo, all of you, so you don't really see some of what I am doing here.
Whatever you're doing is working.
Okay. All right, so let's see now. I think I have a light here. Yeah, I need to start to bring out some of this little lamp. We're going to run out of time pretty soon, so tell me what time the class ends. I can't remember. We still have another 50 minutes or so.
Yeah, well, it's 11:57 here in Santa Barbara.
Yes, about another 50 minutes.
Okay, good. All right, so now I want to get some darkness in here under the archway. And I'm making it a little bit lighter than what I had elsewhere. I'm adding some water to my mixture here. Now I need to soften the edge of this shadow. So I squeeze a little water out of my brush and I'm feathering the edge. I just dragged some very weak paint over the top of this archway so it would be lighter. Need to find a little bit of dry paper towel here, like I showed you before, hitting the edge there where it kind of bled over the edge. And now an even lighter gray to go back here. I'm going to drop some of the warmth that I had in the building up above into that while it's still wet. That's some of the mixture of the yellow with the rose madder. And now looking up above, there's a darker area here that I do want to put in there. Even though we weren't sure what it was, I think the darkness is good. There's a drain. I want to soften this edge because I don't want it to be too obvious that I don't know what it is. Okay, and I'll drop a few things in like the shape of windows. Okay, I have to figure out what I'm going to do about this little roof here that I kind of forgot about. So let me mix some dark, but not kind of a warm dark with rose madder and maybe a little bit of the blue in it. I'm going to define an edge here. I'm going to drop a little bit of this warmth into this window too. I'm trying to integrate some of the colors into the rest of the buildings so that it doesn't look like they're too separate.
Sylvia,
Yeah,
what kind of brush do you have? It looks to be holding paint so well.
yeah, it's a Simmons round brush, a number 10.
Simmons?
Yeah, and it's a synthetic, it's not natural.
Yeah, but it looks so great.
Yeah, I like it because it has a good point.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. So now I didn't do all my roof detail that I was going to do. I'm going to do a glaze on some of my roof just to help to kind of set it, also get it a little bit more defined.
I love your painting, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful.
It feels good to be painting. You know, one thing, I won't be teaching botanical in the next session, so I really hope I'll have the time now to get out and do more painting here where I am. I'm really feeling the need to do that. I'm really missing it because that was what I enjoyed so much, you know, before this all happened. And so that's my plan.
Make it so.
I will make it so.
Won't the rain interfere with the watercolor?
Oh, yes, of course. But also I have to be preparing for hurricane season. So I've been, you know, reading all about it. Penny's helping me. It's funny how our lives have been paralleling one another a little. Penny used to live in New Orleans too. So she gave me some great advice on how to prepare. So,
I
yeah.
was thinking, Sylvia, maybe you should ask Dennis about solar battery backup
Oh, that's what
systems.
you want to get. So I will. He might know. That's a great idea. And you know,
We have one at our house here, but it was custom made. So, but Dennis might know something you can get
yeah,
pret-a-porter, so to speak.
I was reading that you need to figure out just what your needs are, you know, like how much power do you need? Before, when Michael was here during a hurricane, I think she was without power for 3 weeks. And she, at that point, she was able to get some from a neighbor because she was right on the edge of the blackout.
3 weeks. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so you can imagine if it's 3 weeks, you can't really be running your refrigerator and all that stuff.
Right. I mean, you could if you had solar, but that's probably all you could run, and as long as you had sun.
And you'd have to have, I had a gas generator on Vashon Island and I could run my refrigerator and everything, you know, but we don't want the sound of the generator. And we don't really want to be using the gas because Michael says that they even run out of gas during a hurricane.
Yeah. Everything gets depleted.
Why aren't you here anymore, Penny? Did it get to you?
Well, you know, my life changed. I got married and my husband had a house in Santa Barbara, so let's see.
Yeah.
New Orleans or Santa Barbara.
Is your
But,
heart still in New Orleans though?
you know, it's interesting. It is on a certain level. I still have lots of friends, not lots of friends, but a handful of friends there. And there is something, you know, it's the only touch of Europe except for Quebec that we have in North America.
Yeah.
If you feel like you want to go somewhere foreign, it's, you know, you either go to New Orleans or you go to Montreal.
And that's one reason Michael's here. She lived in Italy and she really loved that, but she didn't really want to live in Italy. She wanted to live over here. So,
Yeah, Italy has its complications for sure.
yeah.
I can say that I now understand why my grandfather emigrated.
Really, that's where your
For
root,
all the romance of Under the Tuscan Sun, there is the other side of that coin.
is it the bureaucracy or what?
It is, yes.
Bureaucracy
it's
and corruption.
the
At some
corruption.
point in time, yeah,
That's,
I consider moving to Italia.
yeah, it's the corruption.
Yeah,
And it's, you know, years and decades and centuries of it that's so entrenched. And, you know, to be honest with you, there's also a lot of that in New Orleans, as we know from Ray Nagin. But, you know, it's these kind of places. There's that laissez-faire sort of lifestyle that goes with that. And we like that. But we also are all sort of, you know, used to having things on demand.
Yeah, Michael and I were talking about that we have to remember when we get frustrated that part of the charm and part of the reason we like it here is because of the laid back attitude.
Yeah, and the laid back attitude is, you know, it's good on the one hand, but it also leaves a lot of people behind, which I'm sure you've noticed.
Yeah, I have noticed that.
I guess another analogy south of the equator would be Rio de Janeiro.
There's corruption.
Well, I've never
Yeah.
been there.
Well, my niece lived there for a time. And then she married a fellow from Croatia and moved to Split, Croatia.
Wow.
Oh, that's beautiful, Split. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never
Yes.
been there, but she's loving it. You know, has two
Well, I have
kids.
to tell you, Tim, that I worked in Croatia and Yugoslavia, and maybe other people in the class have been in these countries that were in former times communist.
Yeah.
I worked there during those communist times, and I worked there after the communist times. And it is day and night, but it's still not what we're used to. But there's the beauty, the natural beauty of these places is not to be denied.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah,
countries
your
we've
picture
never
is turning out so pretty.
Well, her husband and their family run a bed and breakfast. Well, no, it's actually a youth camp. So it's like for European kids can come there and vacation. And it's wonderful. You know, they grow their own vegetables and have their own hogs, you know, that they dress and everything. It's another world.
I wish you could go there, Tim, for a visit.
Yeah. I know. Well, she was married there, so I had the opportunity, and my sisters went, and it was amazing. They loved it.
You can go there as our photographer to capture the natural beauty and bring it back to us.
Yeah, my niece was actually running a blog or a newspaper blog for a Croatian periodical. She had a feature column, so I don't know if she's still doing. I don't think she is because now she's settled with children.
That'll make a difference.
Yeah.
Busy life. Yeah.
Beautiful, Sylvia. Your picture is great.
It's
Oh,
gorgeous, Sylvia. What
thank
kind of brush is the one that you're using on the right side? The flat one.
Oh, the flat one was this, let's see, oh, you know what? It's it's a 30. Gee, it's a flat, but let's see, what does it say? 330. It says it's a size 30. It's a sable mix. It's a Dan Schmitz or
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and it's it's pretty big flat brush. I think when you're working larger, it's really good to have bigger brushes.
I knew your painting would be much more colorful than the photo, and it is. It's gorgeous.
Can't help it, can I?
No, you can't. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks lovely.
I'm gonna
It's
put
beautiful.
some of these darks now here. Well, it's still a little damp, so I probably shouldn't, but feel like it needs it.
So Sylvia, I was hearing about Mykonos in Greece, that they're planning to vaccinate everybody who comes on the island and everybody who's on the island, so more tourists can come.
Milos?
So Myos, yeah, in Greece. You were talking about the other day, saying you want to go with Kiko.
Yeah, I want to go to that workshop that Keiko Tanabe is doing in Milos.
Yeah, in October.
Yeah, the end of September and October, and I keep putting it off because what if I have to buy a generator and
Yeah.
shutters for windows and things like that. I think, oh, maybe I should wait, but it's so hard to wait when you want to do something.
Yeah, life's too short.
Kidding.
That should be your birthday present.
Yeah. Well,
Good idea.
it was my birthday present when I went to Milos when I turned 50. I did that with a friend. Well, the friend didn't go with me to Milos. I went by myself there, but I think it's really a great thing to do to celebrate a birthday. That, something that.
Why do you want to go back so soon?
Yeah. Should have gone up for my 70th, right? It's funny, isn't it? It doesn't seem like that long ago. Oh my gosh. Okay, now I wanted to put, let's see, I've got very few minutes to get this pulled together. So I need to do something with some of the white areas.
You're going to put in the balcony?
Yeah, I got to do that. I'm debating, should I do pen and ink on that or?
Oh, I see.
Maybe I'll start with paint and then I'll come back in and maybe add some ink.
Don't feel rushed if you want to work on it at your leisure.
Well, I know, but how can it be a demo if I don't at least pull it together? I guess it could be the way to start, right?
Sure.
And really, a demo is to show you certain principles. It doesn't really mean it has to be everything.
No, it doesn't have to be a finished painting.
Some of these darks are very important. So I have some underpainting here, so there's a kind of a neat mixture of color that's happening where I'm painting over some of what I had painted already.
Once you added those darks to the foliage, it really made the light glow behind it.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I have some red in this, what I'm putting in now, just because I like that warmth closer to me in shadows. I need to bring some of the greens over here to this area too. I think what happened was with my hillside, I got a little too yellow in here, too light. So I need to bring some of the hillside back over into here too. I'm going to add a little bit of this light on the top of the building, so it looks like there's a little bit of light hitting that section back here. And I haven't addressed this white wall. I need to get a little texture, but I still want it to be left pretty light. So a little detail here in the foreground area. Some dry brush strokes. Okay, so how about if I come in now with a little bit of ink? Oh, before I do that, I see I've got to put in my little lamp here. Couple. And just a little more texture on here. Okay. All right, I'm going to do that. I'm going to come back in now. It's odd, isn't it, when you decide you're going to do something and, oh no, I see one more thing. One more thing I have to do.
That's like me trying to get out of the house in time and remembering I have to feed the chickens and all that stuff. There's
Oh,
always another thing that you ought to do before you do it.
right. I guess you at some point just have to say, okay, I'm just going to go.
Fiddly bits, that's what we call it.
Do it. Say that again.
We call it fiddly bits.
I didn't get that. What was that?
Fiddly bits.
Oh, fiddly bits. Yeah, fiddly bits. I'm
When
fiddly
you keep
bits.
fiddling with it.
Right. Okay, so now I'm going to break out the ink. And let's see, maybe I'll try using this pen with some, we'll see if I can work with some watercolor in that, and see if I can mix up the right texture. of that to work with my pen. That makes, have to make a darker tone and a big puddle.
I was watching a demo where a woman just used a little stick with some watercolor on it, fairly strong strengths of it. And what she was putting it on was wet. And so it just kind of blended.
Yeah, I think that's a really neat idea, actually.
It was a very loose style painting.
Yeah, I'm putting some of this watercolor on my pen. It may not be the best idea, but we'll see. So now I need to look at where I want to use it. And I think what I need to do here is delineate a few places where there's, yeah, so this is working pretty well, actually. And I can do some lines for the roof. Let's see here. The reason I like this pen is that you can press down and you can get a thicker line. See if I can get more in it. I just dripped a bunch on my painting. Oh, it's not working that well. Okay, I'm gonna get the microphone. And this one's a number 1 size. So now that I've started this, I've got to like really define a few other places in the foreground too. So let's work with this little map. There's some. Building bricks and things, skipping, so it's not going to be just solid line.
Sylvia, are you using the fine line micron pen for this?
It's not a, it's a thicker one. It's a pigmographic micro, it's a point, it's a 1.
Okay.
Size of it is. And I'm using it here in the foreground more because it is a little bit of thicker line.
Mhm. So do you shed off the salt after your painting is done?
Oh, if I'm going to show it or something, I probably would, but I'm not really very fastidious about that, actually.
Okay.
You know, I'm more of a process person, I think. I have always been enamored of the process.
Uh-huh.
And when it comes to the finishing up, I'm probably not as careful about that as other people might be. I think that's part of why, you know, I've enjoyed the careers I've had. Some of them have not been what other people would consider very interesting, but I love process. So the reason I'm doing some line work here is that I want to help to define some of the detail of the leaves and so forth, and create a little bit more of that definition of the balcony. Let's see. And some places like this where I could use a little bit more definition. Okay, now I'll get a bit of, oh, I guess here I could also put a little bit in here in the foreground for the steps. Now I'll
Love
get
that texture on the walls.
the what?
The texture on the walls.
Oh, that came out pretty good. You mean over here?
Yeah, and the peach colored part as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like the warmth of that too. So, okay, so now here's a much finer pen. So I'll use it for some of the lines that go farther back. To help to define some edges here too. So there's a detail here in this archway that I didn't get with watercolor, and so I can add that with my pen. So after you do some of this line work with your pen, it's a good idea to come back in then again with paint, because at that point, you could come back in and add some darks in places that you want them, or lift out too, you know. I'm just not going to have time to do that because I did want to do the voice threads. So I better stop now because it's, gee, where'd the time go? We don't have a lot of things in VoiceThread, but we do have a few. So I'll go ahead and stop the video now. I was going to put a light color in the lamppost though. Let's see, a little bit of warm color here. All right.
Beautiful.
Thank
Looks terrific. You did a fabulous job.